Here's the number one way product leaders are tanking their own product ideas when they pitch them to executives. Tell me if you've been in this situation before. You've got your strategy deck perfected, 45 slides, polished as usual. Mid presentation, someone says, "Hey, can I just show you an idea I had about this real quick?" They ask to share their screen. They brought a prototype, something they built over the weekend. The room shifts and your deck suddenly feels theoretical. You've felt this sinking feeling before, that moment when you realize the game has changed and nobody told you. And you're not alone. It's happening to senior leaders everywhere. Hi, I'm Polly. I help product leaders stay essential in the AI era by showing them how to lead AI from prototypes all the way to production. I've been in engineering and product leadership for over 20 years, including launching AI at scale at Amazon's Alexa before ChatGPT made it easy. So, what is this change in C suite meetings that's making your gorgeous slide decks irrelevant? Here's what changed. AI has made prototyping accessible to everyone in your organization. And the leaders who are getting funded right now aren't always the ones with the best strategy. They're the ones who can show something working and show more depth through prototypes. Here's what nobody is saying. You do not need to be an engineer to do this, but you do need to know what kind of prototypes you could bring to these kinds of meetings, and knowing the different kinds of prototypes and their purposes will help guide which tools you should dive into in your limited time as a busy executive. The first kind of prototype is a prototype where the goal is to share a vision internally with your team or potentially with customers. The idea is to explain the customer journey and the payoff that they get at the end. You can build these as static mock-ups, but an interactive prototype can really bring it to life and get more buy-in. And if a product experience is heavily dependent on data, mocking up that data in a real-world scenario adds a lot of credibility to a demo. You've thought through all the details and how users really will use this with the real data to bring it to life. My favorite tools for this kind of mockup include ChatGPT using their Canvas feature or Claude using their Artifacts feature. I also really love Lovable.dev. Or if you have a lot of existing visual patterns in your software that you'd like to reuse and show how this new feature would appear in your software, Magic Patterns is a great place to start from existing design systems. The second type of prototype might be for customer validation. So this is where you'd actually try to get a user to walk through a flow and get a reaction, give feedback. It proves if people really want this and would have any problems with the flow that you can improve. And this is where an interactive prototype really shines, right? Clickable mockup, something that makes it even higher fidelity for the user and higher conviction for you is if they are able to create and use their own data in the scenario, right? Then you can really see how that full life cycle would work for them and get really in-depth feedback. And they can tell you whether or not this is something they would want to come back to. Once you're getting into actually creating real data in tables, you can still use some tools like Lovable, but I would suggest pretty quickly, if you're going to have this prototype live on beyond that, you may want to switch to slightly more advanced tools that look a little more like the coding tools developers use. Something like Replit is one that's easier to use and intentionally meant for non-technical users. Or if you want to make this agentic coding your superpower, you can lean more on the tools in tools like Cursor or using Claude Code. Finally, a third kind of prototype is an MVP prototype. So the point here of a minimum viable product is proving that you know the minimal set of features that people would pay for or commit to and actually come back on a regular basis. So proving the value to people is the key here. And you're also proving that this actually is a viable business here for the amount you could charge. So something needs to be real enough at this stage that users can do things like sign up, authentication, provide their payment information. Now we're talking about a lot more security considerations and guardrails. So at that point, you may need to get deeper into tools like Replit, for example, Cursor, and Claude Code. Beware, if you do get as far as an MVP and you do not come from a technical background, fantastic, kudos to you. Don't assume you do not have to rewrite this code when you go to scale it. You're proven that payment piece, but you don't necessarily have to prove it works for thousands of users simultaneously. To get there, you'll probably need a technical partner, and that's when you're going to be looking at how to actually make sure this scales in production. Let's talk about one more type of prototype that isn't really in the same bucket as the other ones, and I call it a proof of concept prototype. The purpose of this is to prove that something works, something is technically feasible. So an example here for a product leader might be a workflow at your work, like, hey, how do we do customer discovery? How do we pull Jira tickets into release notes? And you can run this as a simple AI workflow without using any coding tools. You might use tools like ChatGPT's custom GPTs, Claude Project, You could also use workflow tools like Make.com, Zapier, or N8N for more complex workflows. E would be showing that a workflow can be done with these tools and then bringing it to your team saying, hey, this is how I think that this should be run, but I'm open to having you guys tinker with it. Let's improve it together, and giving the keys to everyone on your team to be able to improve these processes over time is a great way to involve and upskill your team and also provide an easy stepping stone for new people to your program or new people to your company to quickly come up to speed and understand how things are done here. It's not about presenting the most polished, finished version, right? It's about that being that fire starter that shows people what's possible and then gets them excited, gets them involved when they can see how easily they can participate too. So here's the key insight. When you lost out on that product funding pitch, it wasn't because you lacked coding skills or someone was more technical than you are. That's not the problem. They were just taking their concept further and faster using AI tools. They'd proven that they'd thought out more details. And that is often so compelling that even if their idea isn't as good as yours, it can win out. So it's time to up your game. You can absolutely do the same thing. You don't have to write a lick of code yourself. You just need to know what type of prototype you need to build for your situation and invest the time to make these tools second nature for when you need to use them. It isn't about becoming technical. It's about becoming a leader who can make AI real for your organization and not just talk about it. Slides prove that you can think, but prototypes are proving that you can execute. And in the AI era, execution wins. So if you want to become that indispensable leader in the AI era, the leader who builds and makes AI real, that's exactly why I built AI Career Boost Blueprint. I'm holding a free masterclass on how senior leaders are staying indispensable in the AI era without learning to code or becoming super ICs. Seats are going fast, so grab yours from the link in the comments or in my bio. And in the next video, I'll break down how getting to production is completely misunderstood today. So many enterprises struggle with it. What does it actually mean? And why too many leaders are being imprecise and actually losing credibility when they use the term in production. We'll see you next week.